Imagine taking a journey not just across the ocean, but deep down into your healing. What if travel could be the self care you did not know you needed? Today's guest shows us how reconnecting with culture, community, and adventure can become a powerful act of self love. I'm Natty,
I'm Vita,
and
and
we
we
are
are
here
here
to
to
thrive.
thrive. Welcome back to another episode of Thrive by the Rising Muse, the space where self care meets real life. Today, we're diving into the healing power of travel with someone who's been building cultural bridges for more than 2 decades. Teresa Noni Charles, founder of Nomadic Nomi, has spent 20 plus years creating tours, events, and educational programs that connect Africa and diaspora.
Diaspora?
Yes, I know the definition of that. She's not just about travel, she's about transformation. From Afrocentric bridal showers in Chicago to youth heritage trips in Ghana, Teresa's work turns travel into a deep act of self care and empowerment. Welcome to the show, Teresa.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. Let's
Yes.
start from the beginning. What population do you serve through Nomadic Noni, and what are the services that you offer?
Well, I tend to focus on people of African descent, but it's
Mhm.
open for those who are curious about, Africa and the diaspora as well.
Mhm.
We normally have women as our clients. It tends to be women are seem to be more connected to the culture or more interested in learning more about our cultural heritage, but we're open to men as well. We've had some men who travel with us as well, but we serve multi-generational. So we have taken youth abroad on study trips to retirees. So
Mhm.
we try to welcome all, like I said, who is interested in learning about Africa and the diaspora, the culture, and the connections between us here in America, connected to Africa and throughout the whole diaspora.
Okay. Cool. You dedicated your career to connecting the African diaspora through travel. Why has that been so important to you personally?
Well, I didn't like wake up one day. I think I want to do it,
Right,
but I
right.
think it was planted in me and it just developed over time. I grew up in an African center environment in Chicago. So I went
Mhm.
to
Mm.
African center schools all the way through middle school. And not only did I go to schools, African center schools, but it was reinforced in the home. So that foundation was laid.
Hmm.
Had an African renaming ceremony when I was 10 years old. So Noni is my African name. It means gift of God,
Okay.
where
Yes.
nomadic Noni comes from.
Mhm.
But it wasn't until I went to Ghana the first time in 1999. Now, I went to graduate from Clark Atlanta University, so I had all of this, culture embedded in me over the years, but it wasn't until I went to Ghana for the first time. Me and my
Mm.
father coordinated a rites of passage study tour, and my godfather was being installed as a sub chief at the same time. So when I went there, it's like all of those experiences, all of that schooling, all the things that has been planted within me over the years, it came full circle. So
Right.
that's where everything started to come, to life for me when I went, you know, to Ghana, came out of the slave dungeons at Cape Coast Castle, and just something inside of me. When you hear people talking about transformational travel,
Yes.
Hmm.
that's when that happened, because it was just my whole life was just like, how can I take this experience, this knowledge, and bring it back to the US? And so
Mhm.
that's where it was like, what can I do? And then from that I said, well, let me just put out, newsletters to inform people about, Africa. And at that time I was really focused on the Gullah Geechee culture as well. So it became
Mm-hmm.
informational, and then it became a nonprofit, and then the programs, and then more trips. So like everything kind of spearheaded
Hmm.
from that first experience going to Ghana.
Now, one of the things that you were talking about was the fact that you reconnected with your roots. Um, all that things that you saw probably in books or heard from family members finally came to life when you were there. In general, how do you think for people connecting with their roots and their heritage can support their mental health and serve as a way of self care?
Yes, I think when we talk about travel, travel in and of itself can be self care because now you
Mm-hmm.
focus on you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you are brave enough to do solo travel, then you really are focusing on yourself. It's that
Right.
is
Mm-hmm.
what can really heal you. And I really got into solo travel, even though I've been coordinating group trips all throughout the years, and I've traveled solo throughout the US. But the first time I traveled solo abroad was actually during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
It's a little scary at first,
I was gonna say that can be a little
when you meet a
scary.
group, you're in a bubble, right? Everything's
Mm-hmm.
Right.
taken care of. But when you by yourself, you got to figure it out. But when I
Right.
tell you, it is liberating. It is the best self-care, that you can offer yourself. So, but if you're not ready for solo travel yet, just travel in general because now you're
Mm-hmm.
focusing on you. I've heard people say, I've never taken a vacation, 10 plus, X amount of years being on their job. But travel, it helps to soothe not only your body, but your mental health, just to relax, just to get a change of scenery. And then if you add on traveling to different places that focus on cultural heritage, now you're learning
Hmm.
something about yourself. You're learning why do I like rice so much? And then when you go to the
Mm-hmm.
Gullah Geechee, Sea Islands, you see that connection. I like rice. Oh, because my great grandmother, she used to tell these stories about rice and where they came from and how her ancestors were brought from, West Africa down to the Sea Islands, specifically because of their cultivating rice skills. So you
Mm-hmm.
start to understand, like, why I like that. Or why do I speak this way? And I go to a different country and they can understand me. So it
Mm-hmm.
can connect you, but it also can relax you because that mental health, like I said, is about taking the time to step away, I feel, from our regular routine, focusing on ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
focus on the things that brings us joy. And if
Hmm.
travel is one of those things, exploring new places, tasting new foods, engraving, immersing yourself in different communities, it can support mental health. It can support self-care. But I do encourage you, try to do that solo travel because I
And I have questions about that because I have traveled solo for business. So I think the big difference for me, and I'm thinking about a particular trip that I had where I had to be out of town for 2 weeks. So the good thing for me was kind of I had the routine of I had to go to an office during the day and in the afternoon. I loved the fact that I didn't have to go cook, clean, or nothing for anybody because I was in a hotel. And I could have gone, and I did go certain places and stuff. And then on the weekend, I had the weekend to myself. I guess I was not creative enough to think about what I was going to do that weekend. Plus, I was not planning to be there 2 weeks. Like by Friday, it was like, no, you need to stay. So it was not planned in advance.
Mhm.
But when you're planning, and I think that because the hotel where I was, and this is where I'm going, it was near the office.
Mhm.
um I don't know, I felt safe. But how do you plan the trip solo differently so that you can feel, you know that you're safe, that time is productive?
Right.
What kind of research you have to do to make that you don't just book somewhere and you end up in a hotel and just go walking around where the hotel is, that you are actually enjoying the experience.
Right. Well, it depends. It depends on where you're going, right?
Mm-hmm.
You choosing that location, the location in the city or the country,
Right.
what's your purpose for going, because a lot of that determines if it is for work, you want to be close to the job site. And
Right.
then if it's just for leisure, then some people they like just booking a resort. But if you do
Right.
or Airbnb, what I
Mm-hmm.
like to do, and actually I'm about to go to Puerto Rico next week. So,
Ah,
it was,
my hometown.
oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
You gotta tell me the spots then.
Yes, ma'am.
You
We
got
can talk about that.
Hey, you talk to people who might have been to that city and they can give you some insight. But doing a little bit of research. So, I'm interested in culture. So I want to go to a specific place. I did a little bit of research and I know I'm not saying it right. Liza, Liza, Loiza,
Oh, Louisa.
Loisa. Right.
Yes.
Yes. So
Oh, yeah, you're gonna get a lot of culture in Louisa.
yes. I'll learn how to do bamba. So,
Yes, yes, the music,
yeah.
the food. You're gonna have a lot of street food, like literally. Like there's like this little I don't like huts while you're driving down the street, and
Uh-huh.
people are cooking in these big oh my god, like this it's like a homemade chef barbecue, if you may.
Uh-huh.
And you're gonna have bacalaitos, which is basically a fried cod fritter.
Mhm.
And then you can have alcapurrias, which is kind of like a croquette that sometimes is with beef, sometimes is with crab meat.
Mhm.
You're gonna run into places where they sell coconuts, and they open the coconut right in there in front of you, and you can drink coconut water. Oh, you're gonna have so much fun.
I'm so excited.
Sounds like it's
So,
fun.
Yeah.
that
Look,
is like I did some initial research, but then I kind of, like I said, I kind of
Uh huh.
on what particular area I want to go. So, of course, I'm going to go
Right.
to San Juan, and
I was gonna say you have to go to Old San Juan.
right. So then, I kind of figure out like what are some of the highlights that I want to do. And so
Right.
it really depends again, well, where are you going? Yeah, I'm change the scenery, relax a
Mm-hmm.
bit, pre-birthday present, but
Oh, nice.
also it's like, okay, what are you trying to accomplish? And so then you kind of go from there. And so even looking at Airbnbs, yes, sometimes the picture doesn't match
Oh,
you
yeah.
actually arrive, but you just kind of have to. Sometimes you're going to have to take a chance. I was in Spain.
Take it as part of the adventure.
mhm.
Right. I was in Spain the other month, and the location ended up being better than I can ever expect it. It just made me fall
Oh,
in love with
nice.
Spain. So a lot of times it can be a hit or miss, but
Right.
if it's really too bad, then you can, try to, get out of it. But I would
Right.
but the thing is, if you want to do Airbnb, I like Airbnb because you can cook
Mm-hmm.
your own food, with the
Right.
hotels, if breakfast is included, you got to get up at a certain time and go and
Right.
eat. I may not want to eat breakfast at 11 o'clock. So,
Right.
I like, and if I'm there for a few days, it's just more convenient for me.
Right.
Mhm.
But it just depends. So, hotel, if it's a short stay, hotel is fine. I try to look at, I'm more cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense for me to pay $300 or $400 a night, and I'm
Right.
going to spend a lot of time in the
Right.
room, or
Mhm.
pay a little bit less, and then I can go venture out. So and there's nothing wrong if you want to be in a resort and relax all day. So it goes back. Why are you there? What are you looking for? And then
Right.
even with the solo travel, with group travel, like everything is kind of planned. You got an itinerary. This day we're going to do this. This day going to do that. And so what I've learned, don't over plan it. You know, here's
Right.
some of the things I want to do. Okay, I already for Puerto Rico, I named 2 areas I want to go to. So everything in between, okay, we'll play it by ear.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to leave that time for flexibility. So if I don't feel like getting up that day and I just want to sleep in or, stream some movies, then I have time. You're giving yourself permission. So that's what's great about solo travel on
Yeah.
your own
Yeah.
time. You're giving
Mhm.
yourself permission to do what you want, when you want to do it,
Mhm.
and how you want to do it. So
Right.
when you
Right.
look at safety, there is no, well, if you book in this particular area, this won't happen to you. Because, nowadays things happen in the best neighborhood.
Anywhere.
So you
Right.
do have to
Unfortunately.
be you got to keep your head on a swivel,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so, and not act like a tourist. A lot of times,
Mhm.
that's the main thing. We walk around sometimes as a tourist, you screaming tourists. Got the big
Yeah.
Mhm.
camera hanging off of your neck, walking around looking like you don't know where you're going,
Right.
Even if you don't know where you're going, you gotta kind of like act like you know what's going on.
Right.
those are just um those are just some things, like I said, kind of, figure out why you're going, what you want to do, kind of give yourself like an overview. These are some of the things I want to do, these are some of the areas I want to go to, and then give yourself permission. I didn't got to pack everything, in one day. Spread it out,
Mhm.
Right.
relax. I know
Mhm.
a friend of mine, she went to Nigeria and she ended up spending the whole time in the spa. She was trying
Hey,
everything that the spa and the hotel had to offer.
there is nothing wrong with
Not a
that.
thing.
It
Mm-mm.
allows you to change your schedule. You know what I'm
Right.
Yes.
So that's the beauty of excuse me. That's the beauty of it for me.
Yeah.
And then when you come back, to the station, if you feel refreshed, it's like,
Mhm.
oh, I just if you end up doing nothing, like, oh, I feel refreshed because I ended up doing nothing. Or you
Mhm.
end up doing all these different things, you still feel refreshed. There's a change of scenery. You felt, I think you really feel liberated when you travel solo because like, yeah, I did this. I didn't have any children. I have to worry about my partner, having to do what they want to do.
Mhm.
I can do what I want to do.
Yeah.
So
Or nothing if I want to do nothing.
Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
And your trips are not just vacations, they are transformative journeys. Can you walk us through what makes a nomadic noni experience so memorable?
Well, the key thing is that the experiences, everything that we try to offer in our trips, the details are very intentional. So
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's totally different from a solo travel. Do I want to get up
Mm-hmm.
today? And
Right. Right.
with the trips, it's intentional. And we do that because we want you to have these immersive experiences.
Mm.
So it is, for example, for our Brazil trip that we have coming up this fall. And even for last year, I spent the summer in Brazil. I had two group tours in Brazil. I customized those experience where you're able to take capoeira. So they go and into the community and learn capoeira. Capoeira is like a martial arts class that's rooted in
Okay.
African traditions, or it could be where they go to Iquilombo. Iquilombo is a community that's, out on the countryside that was created by descendants of um, enslaved Africans who escaped.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they go to these Colombos, they have these hands-on experience, where they're learning how they cook with the palm oil. So these are immersive. You're there on this land, you learning how they cook with the palm oil. You're learning about these medicinal, leaves and what they do. They do a cultural performances. So these are immersive experiences where you are hands on in the community. And that's what's important. We went
Mhm.
and we took a percussion class. And when I say in the community, we
Mm-hmm.
community, and so,
Right.
those are where the best experiences are. You got to be where
Of
the people
Mhm.
course.
at. You're not
Right.
gonna get this on a resort, a property,
Right.
And so being in the community, connecting to the people, to the culture.
Mhm.
That's what I feel makes it memorable. We had a cooking class. We're in someone's home
Oh wow.
and we're preparing the food right along with them. They're telling us the meaning because in Brazil, food is just not food. Everything
Mhm.
has
Right.
meaning, and they don't waste nothing. We was up there cutting up some. Oh, we done with that? No, that goes in the pot too. You learning from people, from their experiences. So I feel that's what makes it memorable. And based on the feedback, is those connections, that makes it, an experience that is not you're on the bus, you're waving to people, you're taking pictures,
Yeah.
that Instagram moment. Our group tours are totally different than that.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it because I think about it, and I think like when I go to a restaurant, even though they tell you is whatever type of cuisine, it's not the same as when you're actually eating with somebody that cooks at home with the real uh,
Ingredient.
ingredient, right? The real ingredients and the real seasonings,
Mhm.
not this washed up version of it for a restaurant.
Right.
Mhm.
So I totally like that. Now, planning travel can be overwhelming, and these sound like very detailed excursions or travels. How do you make it the preparation for the trip? How much of the you take the stress out of the people who are coming, out of the travelers? How much you guys take on so that they can take that pressure off of them in terms of the preparation?
Well, with our group tours, everything is taken care of. All the
Okay.
logistics, you just need to show up, right?
Show up with
Mhm.
your bag
It's just like you,
and your passport if you're going out of the states.
right. And and then you show up and everything
Hmm.
is taken care of until we make sure you get on the plane. So
Okay.
Mhm.
with the group tour, everything is taken care of. With a customized tour, so let's say you want to travel outside of one of our group tours, same thing. We can customize it based on
Hmm.
what your needs are. You might want something very specific. You might want a particular destination. You want this particular experience. So we can curate, based on your needs.
Hmm.
Also, what I like to do is to educate people about that country, about
Okay.
the culture before they arrive.
Right.
Because I know a lot of times, we're excited to go, and then you get there and you're on these tours and people are talking to you, right? But you're looking around because you're just so in awe, everything's around you. So you might kind
Mhm.
of hear what they're saying. They're
Right.
hit or miss.
Right.
I try to, beyond what the weather is going to be like, what to pack, I try to help people understand, like I said, about the culture, about the community, to manage those expectations so
Hmm.
that when you in country, you can maximize the experience where you can have a
Mhm.
dialogue. So I tell, especially with our youth groups, I tell them, I don't want you to go and ask 50 questions. I want you to be able to have a dialogue. And dialogue
Right.
comes from you knowing something about that country, about that culture, where you're like, oh yeah, and that's that. And then they like, oh, okay, well let me then they'll help fill in those gaps.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
it's all about logistic because we know travel can be a headache sometimes. You
Hmm.
Mhm.
catch that flight, you miss the flight, you trying to go through TSA, all of that. Sometimes just getting there can be stressful. So we
Right.
want to alleviate that stress, handling the logistics, and like I say, I'm preparing you, emotionally and culturally for your destination so you can really be in the moment. You know what I'm saying? So when you get
Hmm.
there, you feel like, oh, I'm home, oh, okay, these my people. So that's
Mhm.
what we try to do, with all of our trips.
That sounds wonderful. Now, you work with a lot of young people and you work with them through programs like Passport to Adventure. How does early exposure to cultural heritage impact mental health for the next generation?
Well, with youth, I truly believe we have to plant those seeds in them very young.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We have to help our youth develop a strong sense of identity and pride.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about mental health, when, especially in our climate now, when you walk into
Mm-hmm.
spaces, when you're confronted with different things, if you know where you come from, if you know
Mm-hmm.
your ancestry in the sense that you come from kings and queens, whatever people are saying to you, it won't impact you in the same way. Because a lot of
Right.
times working in the school system, and those are challenges in and of itself that kids face, in our school system. And then you got to deal with issues outside of school, in your community, in your home. That in itself can affect your mental health. And then when
Right.
you add on, you may not be connected culturally, and don't have a sense of cultural pride or identity.
Mm-hmm.
That can play a sense on it. And it's interesting in that, mental health, and it comes to our kids are so smart.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's a lot of times if we help them, I feel like I said, it's okay.
Mhm.
That what this is what happened at this point in time. They were kings. So just because someone called you this at school, you don't let that affect you because you
Right.
standing, on greatness.
Right.
Or they have different capabilities. You're so, why they teasing you because you're smart. Well, you smart because we invented
Right.
Mhm.
like, we invented, so you take that negative and reframe it into a positive. But I
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
think we have to instill that in our youth, that pride. And so that they stand tall in these situations where they are looked or expected to bow their heads or to refrain from certain
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mhm.
and it doesn't have to be aggressive, but it's like, you know who you are, you walk tall, you stand tall, you are able to articulate. But when you talk about training the youth, like I said, training youth or instilling in the youth about their culture, it is so important. Through our programs and a lot of our youth travel programs that I created under my nonprofit, it was from the community. Just the community members like, oh, we want our kids to be involved in it. When they went abroad, and came back, their parents were still telling me like that experience changed their life. Because a lot of times, a lot of our kids, they don't travel outside. I'm going to see grandma, to stay.
Mhm.
Right.
I realized when I was taking our first group of kids to Ghana, they didn't even know where it was. They signed up for the program. Ghana, they was
They just know we're going somewhere.
like, we know we going to Ghana, but they can figure it out what's on the map. I says, okay, let's just roll this back.
Mhm.
Map skills. But when that window has been, open, it just brings a wealth of possibility. We was able in Ghana, we went to a school. Our kids were playing and interacting with the kids at school. Now, a lot of the kids may not have spoken English very well, but they was
Mm-hmm.
communicating. They're out there
Mhm.
playing games and, all these things. And one of the kids was telling me, she said, they're not this friendly to me at school, at home.
Wow.
They look
Mhm.
at you a certain way, they label you a
Mhm.
certain way in our schools, and she felt connected to the kids. They
Mm-hmm.
just seemed very open. So those experience, because now they're processing how school is in the US versus school is, abroad, because they take
Mm-hmm.
school very seriously abroad
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
because they feel that is their ticket out of their situation. So
Right.
education is
Mhm.
very important. Whereas our kids, somebody asked one of our older students, he was like, I really don't like school. You don't like school?
I understand because I'm like I never understood that. I'm not like. What do you mean you don't like school?
And then he was at a public school, and they're like, it's like a public school. They feed you at our public schools. You get this and
Mhm.
that.
Right.
And in Ghana specifically, you can't go to school unless you had a uniform, and a lot of the uniforms. So the school is free, but you got to have
Mm-hmm.
uniforms. So a lot of the uniforms are handed down. So might
Mm-hmm.
be tattered. So these kids are doing everything they can just to get into school. They're like, you don't like school? Your school is just free. You just show up. So
Mhm.
Right.
was so
Mhm.
perplexed. They was like, "You don't like school?" So it's those little things where the kids they get to learn something about themselves, and more
Right.
importantly, how to appreciate that gratitude for what they
Mhm.
have. Because when you see people that have less than you less
Mm-hmm.
likely to complain. So
Yes.
that's
Yes.
what opens that window. And
Mhm.
we try to develop global citizens because we know in these next few
Yes.
years, by the time these kids that's in elementary school graduate college, probably a global, even more of a global marketplace. I mean, it's going there now,
Right.
but if you're not aware of different countries and cultures, AI gonna take your job pretty much. So
Yes, ma'am.
it's
Mhm.
just
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity for kids to. Mhm. So I think that all plays into mental health, pride,
Yes.
Mhm.
identity, knowing that
Mhm.
wherever you go, you're standing on the shoulders of your ancestors, and you got something you have to fulfill as a mission. You're not just out there aimlessly just doing whatever. You on a mission that
Right.
gives purpose, I feel.
I
Mhm.
agree. Aside from that first trip that you were talking about, when your godfather was being installed, can you think of a memory or a travel moment that has changed you?
Well, I look back, like I said, when I went to Cape Coast. Cape Coast
Mm-hmm.
is where the slave dungeons, one of the slave dungeons,
Mhm.
they have several forts all dotted along West Africa. But the slave dungeon in Cape Coast Castle, that experience, as I mentioned, that was transformational. Because when you
Mm-hmm.
go and you see these legends, and just imagining hundreds of people are packed in here, dark,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and like a little slither of opening where they would throw food down. You're chained
Mhm.
Mm.
together,
Mhm.
and you think about, why am I complaining about
Right.
like my
Right.
condition is on the fritz today, when
Mhm.
it kind of put a little bit things in perspective. You think
Mm-hmm.
about the
Mhm.
sacrifices that they made, and then they separate. They have the female dungeons and they have the male dungeons, and
Right.
you are
Mhm.
in these spaces where you don't even know what's going to happen next. First, you're still trying to figure out like what happened. How did I get
Right.
Mhm.
going out to get hunt for dinner, and now
Right.
I'm in this space. But you about water, and a lot of times the people that they may not have been by the water before because they went inland to take the enslaved Africans. So here in this water, trying to figure out like what's going on, and then when you
Mm-hmm.
walk through the door where they call the door of no return because you knew something on the other side of that. I know I'm not coming home. Something on the side of
Mhm.
this door
Mhm.
is something that don't quite seem right. So when
Right.
you, like I said, you can read about things, you can see pictures, you can hear people's stories. But when you in that space, and I've heard people say the ancestors will speak to you
Mm.
in
Mm-hmm.
that space. So
Mhm.
much blood has been shed on that
Yes.
Mhm.
sacred ground. And if you've seen the movie Sankofa, it speaks to that. When you are in that space, something, if you are in tune, if you allow those ancestors to move through you, you will be changed. It's just
Yeah.
Mhm.
like if you come out the same way you went in,
You are not paying attention.
it's a disconnect.
Right.
Right.
So I think for me, that was the moment. It was, and what's so interesting, I was for this first visit, I was running around trying to get everything done, packing and making sure I have everything. And a friend of mine, she said, "You have to see the movie Sankofa." I'm just like, "What?" I'm running out of my mind. I got to do this, that, and the other. Remember, she said, "You have to see this movie Sankofa." So I'm up here laying on the couch trying to watch this movie and I fell asleep. But
Mm.
I saw the part that I needed to see. And that was the opening. And I don't know again if you've seen it, but this is right before she was transported back to being on the plantation. I saw
Mhm.
that beginning journey, like what, right before she, like I said, was transport. So
Mhm.
they showed the dungeon. So seeing that, and of course I saw it once I got back. I'm like, I gotta see the rest of the movie. But
Right.
that beginning, that was what I needed to see at that time because I
Mm-hmm.
saw that and then I was there. It
Mm-hmm.
was
Mm.
like, wow. And so that's all like I was mentioning about preparing yourself for travel. Now, even though she was like, you gotta see it, and I'm looking at her like, what are you talking about? I'm glad she did. And that's part of the preparation because by me seeing that movie and then going there, I made a deeper connection, and so it planted a seed that then I was like, I gotta come back, I gotta do something. And so
Right.
that's how the real journey began, over the years, under a nonprofit, under a for-profit, but it's always been consistent in helping people discover that cultural connection between African and diaspora. That has been my purpose over the last 20 plus years.
I think that's awesome. While you were talking, I thought about Natty and our homeschool teachers.
Hmm.
And we have three young men. One just graduated from high school 2 weeks ago.
Wonderful.
And he wants to go to Gwinnett Tech to be a barber.
Mhm.
And then we have a 13-year-old that's going to the 8th grade, and then a 4-year-old that just passed his test, and he gets to go to kindergarten.
Wonderful.
Yes. A few months ago, we took them to the Apex
Museum.
Museum downtown Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
and I had never been myself. But when I walked in
Mm-hmm.
there, I felt something. I felt
Mm-hmm.
my body was tingling. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa. And I was telling the boys, they showed mannequin dark black legs hanging out with chains. And I was
Mm-hmm.
explaining to them that's how ancestors came over. And there were questions.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go to the bathroom? How do you do this and
Right.
that? And when I explained to them, whatever you have to do, you do it where you are.
Right.
And if someone dies next to you, more than likely they're going to stay there a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, just talk to them about gases building in the body and exploding. And they were like, what? Yes. That's
Mm-hmm.
what our ancestors went through coming over here. And they did not volunteer
Mhm.
to come over here. It's
Right.
like you always saying, one day you out hunting
Mhm.
and the next day you're in chains in the bottom of a ship.
Mm-hmm.
And just telling them about that, it gave them something to think about.
Right.
And then when we went to the part where it said colored only
Mhm.
and whites only,
Mm-hmm.
I looked in their faces, the 13-year-old, 19-year-old, they were like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And when I was telling them back in the day, and where it said colored only, that water in the water fountain was warm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't cold, crisp, and cool like it was in the white only.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So sharing things with them and how we couldn't sit anywhere on the bus.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And even if there were no Caucasian people sitting up front, we still had to sit behind a sign.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And then if it spilled over, you would have to move back.
Mm-hmm.
And they couldn't even begin
Right.
to wrap their mind around it because they have so much freedom
Mhm.
and they have so much privilege
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
that they could not see. And I told them back in the day, you could not look a Caucasian person in the face.
Mhm.
Right.
They expected for you to look down, look at the ground. Yes, sir. No, sir.
Right.
Like that. And mine, especially the oldest one, he's looking at me like, Grandma, have you lost your mind? Baby, Grandma did not make this up.
Mhm.
This is where we came from.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think they had some thoughts in their mind. I'm pretty sure when we walked out of that place,
Mm-hmm.
the ride home was quiet.
Quiet.
Did you notice that?
Yeah.
The ride home was quiet.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And they were not asleep.
Right.
And I'm saying to myself as I'm driving, Lord, um, just show them
Right.
and show them how much privilege they have and
Right.
what we came from. Because first thing you'll hear today is, if I was back then, I would do A, B, and C. No, you wouldn't.
Mhm.
And if you tried it,
Right.
the outcome would not be pleasant.
Right.
So, it was like, ain't nobody gonna tell me that, ain't nobody gonna. I'm so glad you're here today.
Yeah.
You would not have survived.
Would not have made it through that time, okay? But yeah, and that was just a museum.
Mm-hmm.
But if we took a trip
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
and got to see the
Right.
dungeons and
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that would really just blow their hair back. you know.
And
But
but it's so important to expose youth to that. Sometimes it can be uncomfortable, but
yes.
just like you said, taking them to the Apex Museum, that opened that door. That gave them
Mm-hmm.
something to think about. And so,
Yeah.
and even from just the experience of going to the museum, that might change their trajectory. That
Mm-hmm.
might change, like, I need to move with purpose, because
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
sometimes when you look at all that has occurred and you look at, well, I got some things going on, some comfortable things going on in my life, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
that can change your
Yeah.
purpose. Like, I might need to see how I can help someone. You never know. Planting those
Yeah.
seeds, you never know, because as that phrase said, if we don't know our history, we doomed to repeat it. And
Right.
so
Right.
for our youth, we have to, because like you said, they think sometimes the youth are entitled. They feel the entitlement. Why can't I have those Nike $200 gym shoes? Why can't you
Yeah.
want those
Apparently, you know those kids.
jobs?
Mm-hmm.
So we have
Definitely.
to keep them grounded. Yes, we want to
Yes.
spoil our children and grandchildren, but we got to keep them grounded. We got to know where they came from. That goes back to
Yeah.
identity, to pride. That what you have now, looking at all that history and to see where they
Right.
came from to where you are now, to be appreciative, gratitude, and how they can pay it forward. And I think that's what's important is what can you do? And when I was doing our movies with the Mission film series, where we show films to inform and inspire people about African diaspora. I would show the films, but we have dialogue afterwards, discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And the end of the day, I say, so what are you going to take from this and move forward and pay forward? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, that was a great movie. Yeah, that was interesting. But it's like, what
Mm-hmm.
can you, take from it? And what can I do
Mm-hmm.
different in my community? Who can I
Mm-hmm.
inspire from what I've learned today? Because it's always about taking that knowledge. The phrase African proverb, each one teach one. What
Yes.
I learned, let me see how I can inform others. But the youth, we need to really, I love working with youth, and that's our future. And
Yes.
change has always started from the youth. Everything,
Yes.
comes from youth, but we have to really invest, in them. We have one student, well, one particular student, when I said the ancestors move through you. So our full passport to adventure program is a 9-month program. I run it through
Mm-hmm.
during the school year. And so it's not like you just come and you listen. It's kind of like a Saturday school environment. You do presentations and homeworks. And so one of the sessions was on the triangular trade, and that was in the fall semester. So the study tour is not to the summer. Now when we
Mm-hmm.
were in Ghana, there was some things I'm reminded. Remember we talked about that in class. Remember we talked about this in class. But when we got to Cape Coast, to the slave dungeon, I said, I'm not gonna say nothing. And we did libation, when you pay homage to the ancestors by pouring water, on the ground, calling out
Mm-hmm.
to the ancestors. So we did libation in the slave dungeon. And when we walked out of that slave dungeon on our way back to the bus, the kids were crying. Now I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, okay, wait a minute. We're not trying to make people cry.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I had the mentor slash chaperones. They say your work is done because
Mm-hmm.
the ancestors moved through them. They were crying because, like you said, it penetrated their life.
Yes.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
seen in a good
Yes.
way because that connection, because they remember what that session was months
Yeah.
before. And then now this is when the lessons come to life. You're in that space. You feeling the
Yes.
presence of the ancestors. And then one of our students, she shared something, with us that was very personal. We was like, we didn't even know that about her. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
telling you, when I say those ancestors move through you, they move through you. But
Yes, ma'am.
but their lives were so open after that. You know what I'm saying? It's that
Mm-hmm.
confidence.
Mm-hmm.
They went through that. I gotta have a purpose in life. It's
Yeah.
my mission. So that was an eye opener for me, just how it can manifest with youth.
Right.
And so that was just one of the experience, and all the other experience. They're in the schools with the kids. They're walking through the community. You see in a lot of pictures in Africa. They transport bags and lots large foods on their heads.
Mm-hmm.
That so they was in the community, and then they was walking around with the bags on their heads, and stuff like that. And one of the parents told me when they got back in home, they in the grocery store carrying the dog food on their head. So a lot of these things, when you immerse people in
Yes.
culture, it will translate to you coming back home.
Yeah, it's like you said, what are you doing? What do you mean what I'm doing? This is where we came from. Our
Mm-hmm.
ancestors did this.
Right,
If they did it, why can't I do it? But it's great when we put our young
right,
people in a position to see how good they have it.
Oh yeah.
Because today take a lot for granted. A lot.
right,
And when we're trying to teach them and we get um upset when they're not taking the lesson seriously, or they decide I don't want to read today.
Mm-hmm.
mhm,
Well, did you know that back in the day our ancestors didn't read, and the only one who did was the pastor of the church?
mhm,
Back in the day, you only had two outfits: your field outfit through the week
mhm.
and one outfit to go to church on Sunday. And I mean, my boys looking at me like, what? No Nike, no Jordans, no this,
Sometimes you
no
didn't have
darling.
shoes.
They didn't have shoes, sweetie. Okay, they were barefoot,
Right,
and if they did have shoes, they would walk literally out of
Right.
them,
right,
so and for them to look like
right.
we have to do that so that they gotta know,
Mhm,
because these kids walk around today, privilege, privilege,
mhm,
privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
mhm.
I think this puts them back on the ground.
Right.
It definitely
It
does.
humbles them. Mhm,
It keeps them grounded, and that's the more I want to teach that what you have, yes, is a privilege,
mhm.
but don't forget what people's shoulders you're standing on
Right,
who helped you to get where you are today.
right.
So, and I am the nobody can make me sit in the back of the bus. Well, that's a good mindset to have, son.
In 2025.
In 2025,
Right,
but in 1925, it was something totally different.
Right.
right.
Knowing that you don't just do vacations, that you do journeys, you do life changing experiences,
Mhm.
um, things to make you just see life differently now and be more appreciative of it. For someone who's listening today and who feels disconnected, stuck, or burnout, what would you say to encourage them to explore travels as a tool for their healing?
Go.
You know what?
There you go.
Just like no is a complete sentence, period,
Mm-hmm.
go is a complete
Mm-hmm.
sentence.
Yes.
Yes.
Go.
Now, when is the best time to start planning a trip? Especially if someone wants not, just go and see sights, but like really have an engaging experience. I
Mhm.
guess with the answer of go will be any day. But I guess how long does it take to make the arrangements for that kind of trip?
Right. Ideally, 6 to 12 months.
Okay,
Okay.
that
You
makes
know,
sense.
if you are, so let's say you're trying to do a family reunion, you're trying to big group. When I say a big group, it can be your immediate family, extended family. The more
Mm-hmm.
people, I would say a longer um, prep time.
Mm-hmm.
It also could be based on the destination.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
like for Ghana, there's a lot of steps that you have to go through before you get on that plane. So,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
depending on the destination, it might take a longer time. Ghana is not your. I'm going next month. That's not
Mm-hmm.
your destination for that.
Mm-hmm.
Puerto
Mm-hmm.
Rico, you can because it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
require a passport. You know,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
but 6 to 12 months to
Mm-hmm.
if it's a group tour, you trying to gather all the people, your friends that you would want to travel with, because sometimes you do need that travel tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because that
Mm-hmm.
also determines what kind of experience you will have as well. If you travel with family, your organization, a school, if there's people that that's always great. But a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times with our groups, there are people, a lot of people, they don't know each other. And so that's why you try
Mm-hmm.
to make it a community so that, people can get to know each other, but the main thing, everybody, I try to instill the mindset. So even if you're traveling with different people that you don't know one another, what's that mindset? Understanding
Mm-hmm.
the why. Where are you going?
Mm-hmm.
You going just to go? I said
Mm-hmm.
go, but but why are you going? And
Right.
so depending on those questions being answered, that will determine your lead time. And
Mm-hmm.
so some destination, it could be a minimum of 3 months. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
it does depend on what is it you're trying to do. If you want to, for Brazil, I want to learn samba. I want to learn how to cook muqueca. I want to, percussion. I want to do these, at
Mm-hmm.
minimum 3 months, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of the times, especially the destinations that we go to regularly, we already have partners in place. So
Right.
those are the things, and we try to definitely work with Black-owned businesses in all these countries. So,
Mm-hmm.
but again, if it's a destination that's close, that doesn't have a lot of requirements, a solo trip,
Mm-hmm.
and you can jump on that plane and make it happen. Because especially with a solo trip, like I said, that itinerary is not set in stone.
Right.
So you just kind of like, I want to hit this place, that place, I want to do this, and then you can just freestyle it. Yes, but
Mm-hmm.
with the group, you do want lead time, and then with tickets as well. So it's not only logistics and trying to get everybody on board to like, yeah, we going here. Don't you want to go?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
it also depends on airfare, and then the
Mm-hmm.
time of the year. So if it's high season, so all of those things come into play. Where are you going? Definitely the why, what time of year you want to travel, what type of experiences you're looking for. So 6 to 12 months is ideal, but at minimum 3 months if it's for a group. And if it's solo, you can just hop on that plane, cash in
Mm-hmm.
those Sky Mile points, and make it happen.
And go have fun.
That sounds wonderful. And look, before we go and before we wrap up, tell us what's next for Nomadic Noni. Any upcoming programs or destinations? Because I know our audience should look out for.
Yes, we got a lot happening this year. We have coming this fall our Gullah Culture Retreat coming this fall, where you be able to immerse yourself doing the crafts, indigo dyeing, as well as seagrass basket, learning more
Mm.
about the culture, the Gullah Geechee culture. So that's coming in
Mm-hmm.
October. We're going to Bahia, Brazil in November for Conscientious Black Consciousness Month, excuse me. So
Mm-hmm.
that is in November. That is their Black History Month.
Okay.
We are going to in December, Ghana twice. We will, in early part of December, it will be an artisanal tour. So you'll be learning the different crafts, how they do it. Batiking. You're right there learning how they doing the pottery. I don't know if you've seen these bowls that they make that they cook with. You'll
Mm-hmm.
be doing the crafts that you literally go there to buy. You're going to be making your own. And then in the end of the year, we got our New Year's Eve celebration. Bringing
Oh,
the new
that
year in
sounds
Ghana,
fun.
but also in those trip. Yeah, because Ghana likes to party. So that's the
Yeah.
best way to bring in the new
Mm-mm-mm-mm.
year.
Really?
But we also
Wow.
have a lot of programming coming this summer as well. When I get back from Puerto Rico, that
Uh-huh.
we will be doing youth programming, some cultural craft classes, where
Mm-hmm.
each month, each week they'll be doing crafts focused on a different country. So whether it be
Oh,
Ghana,
nice.
That sounds like
Brazil,
fun.
South Africa, they will be doing crafts and learning about that country,
Mm-hmm.
through crafting. We will also
Mm-hmm.
have
Mm-hmm.
an adult version called in crafternoons, cultural crafternoons. So
Mm-hmm.
for
Oh,
adults, similar where you'll be doing crafting activities in a relaxed environment, listening to some music based on that country, be in community and crafting. So we're using this cultural craft afternoon as a relaxing. So we talk about mental health and relaxation. Crafting is another way to just kind of de-stress.
right.
And while you de-stressing, you're going to be learning
Mm-hmm.
something new. We also going
Right.
to be doing what we call Destination Discovery Day. So a lot of times you be like, yeah, I kind of heard about that, but I don't know. This is an opportunity where you're going to come, you're going to learn about the country through interactive activities. You're going to see a film. There's going to be crafting opportunity. This is a way you culturally curious traveler. Let me get.
Mm-hmm.
This is the
Mm-hmm.
way you just like. I heard something about this gullah. Now, what is that? This is
Mm-hmm.
just come and learn.
Yeah.
We're going to be showing Gullah films. We're going to do some basket weaving, not your seagrass basket weaving,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
you will learn how the technique and do some crafting and basket weaving, some other interactive activities, learning a little bit about the Gullah language. Like, well, how did they get down there? So you learning that connection, why were they brought to, the southeast region, coastal region? So it's going to be a fun way to learn about a country, and the culture. So those are some of the things that we have coming up. And then we're going to do some meetups where our heritage is happening, where we're going to also go to different places around the city where it's another way to immerse yourself in the country, in the
Right.
culture. So we're going to go meet up and do samba classes,
Oh.
capoeira classes. We will be going to the Apex Museum, that Middle Passage uh,
Mm-hmm.
exhibit, African
Yep.
dance
Yes.
classes. We're going to go and do a Gullah food experience. So these are ways where, like, I want to know more. I may not be ready to travel there, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious. I want to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be around like minded people to learn
Right.
more and
Mm-hmm.
to experience that. And again, we try to create that community, a community of curious cultural travelers. So,
I like
but
that.
all of this information you can find on that website at www.nomadicnoni.com.
You read my mind because that was my
I
next
know
question.
we were getting ready to ask you, let people know where they can
Right.
connect with you.
Yes.
Can you say that one more time, please, Miss Teresa?
Nomadic Noni, www.nomadicnoni.com. Nomadicnoni.com.
Awesome. Well, Miss Teresa, we want to thank you for reminding us that healing sometimes happens when we step outside of our comfort zone and sometimes across the borders. We're so grateful that you shared your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And to everyone listening, if you've been feeling the pull to reconnect, to heal, or just to breathe deeper, maybe it's time to answer that call. Your journey toward thriving might just begin with a passport. Thank you, Miss Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Thrive by the Rising Muse. Remember, your wellness journey matters. And sometimes The world itself is part of our self care toolkit.
And if you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988 if a loved one or someone you know is experiencing a mental health crisis. Call 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room.
And if you think you're in a domestic violence relationship, you need to talk or get assistance, you can dial 800-799-7233 or text 887-888. Please make sure that you're in a safe place while making this outreach.
Until next time, keep rising, keep thriving,
And don't forget to thrive. Have a blessed day.
Bye bye.